Mrs. Mathis, I'll call the meeting to order. Would you please stand for the opening prayer and pledge of allegiance, please?
Lord, we are meeting here tonight to conduct matters of business. Guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being the source of our guidance tonight. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call. Krug is present. Tucker?
Present.
Gopal?
Here.
Kessler?
Here.
Mathis is absent. Lorraine?
Present.
Shoemaker?
Present.
Okay, first thing we have to do tonight is, in the absence, is elect a temporary chair.
I move Clerk Krug.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you. We'll move right along. The next is a recording announcement. To you folks that are in the audience, and I'm glad you're there, this meeting will be televised and played back on channel 191. Usually starts the next week on Thursday. If you want to say anything, I'd like you to give your name, but you don't have to give your address or anything like that, okay? Next one is approval of agenda. Are there any additions or subtractions to the agenda? Hearing none, I'll need a motion for approval of the agenda.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you. Next are the meeting minutes of the November 6th general meeting. Are there any questions or revisions that were shown or found in the minutes?
I got two little fixes.
Okay.
I tell Tom had an election and the bubonic plague at the same time. I don't ever get two on him. The presentation by Joe Graves, Representative Graves, introduced Fenton Township. We're missing the word
Resident.
resident.
I already fixed that when I found it this morning.
Yeah, likely story. Did you get the second one?
No, I don't have the second one.
Let me tell you what it is.
Yeah.
Down in the snow removal thing, it starts off with Clerk Krug reported this and such, and then it says she recommended awarding the contract to the Fenton groundskeeper. So I'm not sure.
What's the issue?
That's the issue.
Yeah, good point.
Touche. Is it? I can't remember who did it. If it was Bob, then it needs to be he, and if it was Bonnie, it needs to be.
Yeah, it may have been, I wrote it one way and then it switched it during, it was a meeting, I wasn't here, so I was going from notes.
Oh, you can use that card now, huh?
Yes.
Okay. I gave you bubonic plague and election. You want? Or was it here too?
Let me find it here.
Once those two are changed, any other changes? If not, I'll have the minutes stand and approved as amended. Expenditures, are there any questions tonight regarding the expenditures? If not, I need a motion is in order to approve the expenditures totaling $325,371.51.
So moved.
Support.
Roll call, Tom?
Lorraine.
Yes.
Shoemaker.
Yes.
Mathis is absent. Krug.
Yes.
Kessler.
Yes.
Gopal.
Yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Next is the public hearing in regards to the proposed Lake Panema Improvement Special Assessment District. Basically a continuation of the previous public hearing.
Right.
Hi, my name is Paul Hausler. I'm with a company called Progressive AE. We were approached by the Panema Squaw Tupper Association probably about 5-6 weeks ago. And they hired us to basically do an assessment on their lake, an evaluation, I shouldn't probably use that word assessment, but to determine or put together a budget for them to move forward on this next five-year program. So I'm gonna basically give a short PowerPoint, hopefully short, and kind of explain a little bit of what we're proposing in that program. And at the end, a budget will be proposed. We did provide a copy of the report to the Township Board and a few others prior to the meeting, and I think I gave everybody a hard copy here. And for those folks in the audience, it's kind of a summary, one-page handout over there that explains the program and has a budget in it. So I'm going to go through this. If you have any questions, I would ask that you hold them till the end, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. And I'm probably going to have my back to somebody, so I apologize, whoever that is, whether it be the board or the audience. I don't know if there's a way to dim the lights a little, or not to do that much, probably. That's probably good. So one of the things that when we do an evaluation of a lake, it's very important to determine the physical characteristics of the lake, because that often plays into how you best manage a lake. One of the things that we notice right away is there's some unknowns as far as the physical characteristics of Lake Panema. We, or Rick, should say Rick Butine from my office is here to assist me, but he digitized the shoreline based on recent aerial photography, and then we calculated an area based on that. So we're pretty secure in the area at 420 acres. That's including the man-made channels. The maximum depth is kind of up in the air. We saw two different sources. One was the DPW years ago, I think it was 1934, did some soundings through the ice. It was kind of an incomplete map. I'm guessing it was because some of the ice was unsafe. So they mapped out certain areas of the lake, but it didn't really have contours. It just showed individual depths at individual soundings. So on that map, it showed a maximum depth of 82 feet. We also were provided with a study done by Wally Fusilier back in the 80s, and that study showed a maximum depth of 77 feet. So one of the things that we're proposing is that the lake be mapped using modern hydroacoustic high-definition sonar. It can be done fairly effectively at a relatively inexpensive price, and by gaining that knowledge or information, we're able to increase our level of management, I would say tenfold from what we are right now. One of the other things that a physical characteristic, how it plays into managing a lake, is the retention time. That's the amount of time that it takes for the entire volume of water of the lake to be replaced by either through precipitation, evaporation, or through inflow coming through surface water or groundwater flow. That can be determined if you have a good volume or an accurate volume. It's a little bit harder to determine if you do not have an accurate volume. The estimate from Wally Fusilier's study was 102 days. Once we have done what we're proposing and mapping that bottom and getting more accurate volume, much more accurate volume, we can get information from USGS and the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality on the discharge measurements, both upstream and downstream of the lake, and get a much more accurate number there. That plays into, particularly if you're using chemical herbicides on a lake, some of the have to remain in contact with the plants for a certain amount of time. So depending on what herbicide you use, that could play into that. The shoreline development factor is important from two standpoints. One is the amount of shoreline relative to the size of the lake. So what that is a shoreline development factor of 1.0 means you have a perfectly round lake, and it has, you know, X amount of miles of shoreline. Lake Conema is not perfectly round, and when you add the channels, that adds a lot of shoreline to the amount of area. So it's basically 3.3 times the amount of shoreline that you would have versus a round lake. And how that plays into management is that you have that much more shoreline to manage for invasive aquatics. You also have that much potential of residents that live along that shoreline. So there's going to be a higher use factor also. So that also plays into recreational carrying capacity, which we're not going to get into now. That might play into future use of the lake. So the hydroacoustic mapping that I'm talking about is using these high definition, higher end sonar units. What they do is they collect data by measuring the time between different wavelengths of sound that are sent to the bottom off the transducer, and that information is collected onto a memory card, and then we take that back to the office. We upload it to the cloud. There's a company in Minnesota that processes the data, and a few days later they send you back that raw data. From that raw data, we're able to create maps and different, based on based on particular algorithms. On this particular map, this is a different lake, but it shows the what's called biovolume, which is basically the height of plants in the water column. So those red hues on that map, meaning it's at or near the surface plant growth is. This lake here was in Cassopolis, Michigan, is entirely infested with Eurasian milfoil. So most of those red areas that are shown were Eurasian milfoil. So we went out and mapped it. We created a new depth contour map based on that. And we were able to create survey maps and treatment maps. And so when we gave the information to the applicator, they were able to accurately go out there and treat the lake based on the volume of water in those treatment areas. And when we did a follow-up survey, they had about 70 acres of milfoil out of about 177 acre lake. When we went out there this summer, at the end of the summer after the treatment, it was just one treatment, we didn't find any milfoil at all. So it was very effective. And we think we can have maybe not those results, but similar results.
What was it treated with?
It was treated with a chemical called triclopyr, which is similar to 2,4-D, but triclopyr does not have any drinking well setbacks, so it's a little easier to use that. One of the things that we always emphasize to the lakes that we work with that are aquatic plants are they perform many functions in an ecosystem. You do not want to take out all the plants in the lake. If you try to do that, the one thing the DEQ is not going to let you do that, which they permit all these herbicides that are applied, and they only allow certain herbicides that have been approved that they know are going to be selective, or the ones that are more broad spectrum, they only allow at certain dosages or certain times of the year. So the effect on native plants is less. So it's important to realize that if people want a swimming pool, they're better off just buying a swimming pool than trying to turn their lake into a swimming pool. So Eurasian/hybrid milfoil, we actually had the milfoil tested. We took some samples. It was hybrid milfoil, which is a cross between Eurasian and native milfoil. What they found in studies is that hybrid milfoil is a little more tolerant to herbicides, so you typically have to go with higher dosages for hybrid milfoil. That milfoil from the lake I showed you previously was Eurasian milfoil, which is easier to kill. So I need to keep that in mind also. So that's a line drawing that shows what milfoil looks like. It basically kind of has 4 leaves coming off the stem. It has a feathery appearance, especially when you take it out of the water. It's very limp once you take it out. This is what it looks like underwater. Has a red tip on it typically, the growth tip. So another plant that we found when we did our survey in, I think it was October, beginning of October, we found some curly pondweed, which is common. It is an invasive plant, though. It came over from Europe also. It has been around since the 1800s, so milfoil has only been around since the 1940s. So it's almost what they call naturalized. Some botanists feel that it's naturalized now because it's been here so long, but it still does cause problems. It forms canopies at the surface and shades out the native plants, so it does have competitive advantage over the native plants. It is fairly easy to control. On the short term, it's a little harder to control in the long term because of the way it reproduces. I don't know if you can see on here, but there's a little, what's called a turion that comes off the stem or the axial branch there. And that is how the plant reproduces. It's very firm and hard. It has kind of like a shell on it that is unaffected by herbicides. It sinks to the bottom. It's viable for 8 to 10 years in the sediment, so it's just waiting for the right conditions to grow. So generally, when you're managing curly leaf, it's going to take several years before you get it under control. There wasn't a lot of curly leaf on the lake when we were out there, but there could be more in the spring. It's typically a springtime problem. This is what it looks like under the water. The third plant, which is relatively new to the United States, is starry stonewort. It came over in ballast water through the St. Lawrence Seaway. It's found in the St. Lawrence Seaway in the late 1970s. They found it in Detroit River by 1984, and it's probably been in inland lakes in Michigan since the late 1990s at least. But it's really become one of the primary issues for management. As you can see, the one picture there with shows a nice green shoreline or green grass. Where I took the picture from was in about 5 foot of water, 5 foot depth, and you can see that the starry stonewort is coming near the surface in 5 feet of water. So it's just prolific amount of biomass that it produces, grows incredibly fast. I always say if they can determine a way to create biofuel from this stuff, it would be off the charts because it just grows so fast. But it's very difficult to manage. This is what it looks like. In my right hand is the starry stonewort. In my left hand is the Cara, which is a native macroalgae. So the Cara is actually good. It's beneficial. It's low growing. It provides good habitat for juvenile fish and insects. It also creates kind of like a carpeting on the bottom that keeps the sediments from getting stirred up, so it improves the clarity of the water. But starry is basically what I would call Cara on steroids. It doesn't stop growing at 4 to 6 inches like Cara does. It'll grow 4 to 6 feet. I think you've seen it just deep as about 8 feet. And that's a picture of the reproductive structure. Looks kind of like a Chinese star. It's fairly small, about the size of a grain of rice and milky colored. And that's primarily how it reproduces. Wild celery is a native plant that we found to be quite abundant in the lake. And it can also be a problem, even though it's a native plant, it does tend to be a nuisance at times. And it's primarily because, not so much when it's growing in the water, but it breaks loose really easily because it's got a shallow root system. Any kind of boat traffic will stir it up and uproot it. It'll come up to the surface and then it floats around and gets pushed around by the wind, piles up on shore. So people probably spend a lot of time raking it off their property. Also, Swans and geese love to eat wild celery, but they only eat the very base of the plant. That's where all the carbohydrates are. So the leaves are left, and the leaves just float around, and again, it causes problems. There's ways to treat it, but you have to get it fairly early in the life cycle of the plant. This is what it looks like underwater. So when we go out and do our assessments, we typically do 4 to 5 per year, starting in lakes of this latitude, probably early to mid-May. And we determine, we divide the lake up into different sections, and we determine what's growing in that section, whether it's a problem or not, whether it needs to be addressed through management. Identify the species, and if sometimes when the water clear isn't very good, we throw a rake out, basically a thatching rake we found works best. And it's good at identifying the plants when you can't see too well. So our treatment maps are going to look kind of like this. This is what we identified on our October 3 survey. The red areas are hybrid milfoil, and that looks a little fuzzy actually. The kind of yellow black hatched area are the starry stoneware. So those were the two biggest problems at that time when we did the survey. It was quite extensive. So I think we found about 72 acres of hybrid milfoil and about 33 acres. So roughly a little over 100 acres that needed to be managed. And we can identify things by looking through on the high definition sonar. Particular starry stoneware has a particular signature. It's generally can grow in deeper water too, so when it's in deeper water, you can kind of pick it up off the sonar, and we verify by throwing a rake. I would say about 90% of the time it's accurate based on the signature of the sonar. So we use the GPS waypoints. We set up points every 300 foot of shoreline. And then where we know there's shallow waters offshore, we also set grid points up. We use the GPS exchange software so that the contractors have the same set of reference points that we're using, the GPS points. And so when they get that map, they can directly reference it with the, when they're out on the lake using their sonar units. And that's all emailed to the contractor. Then when we go back out, we have the same data points so we can check where they're at, where they've done treatment or harvesting. So all of our contracts, when we work with these different contractors, are performance-based. So they basically don't get paid until the job is done correctly. So we go out beforehand and after the work is done, determine if it's done effectively. If it's not, they have to go back and do the areas that aren't done well, and then we have to approve the payment for that. Zebra mussels, it looks like from what we could gather from the available data that zebra mussels came into the system somewhere around the year 2000, right around that range. So the impact of zebra mussels is increases the light penetration in the lake, and what that does is say that your transparency or your clarity was about 5 or 6 feet before the zebra mussels. That means plants can typically grow out to about 7 or 8 feet in that clarity, 7 to 8 foot depth. But what it did is basically double the transparency to about 10, 11 feet on average. So what that did is allowed the plants to be able to grow out to about 16, 17 feet. So you're opening up bigger areas of the lake that potentially can grow plants now. It also increases potential for rooted plant growth. I just talked about that. It also shifts the algae dynamic. What happens is zebra mussels are prolific filters of floating algae or planktonic algae. So the planktonic algae, the free-floating algae, typically population goes down once you have zebra mussels, so the water clears up. The type of algae that it favors are the filamentous algae, which are the stringy algae that attach to docks and the bottom of plants. and also microcystis, which is a harmful algae. It can contain toxins in it. So the zebra mussels basically spit that out because they don't want the toxins in their system. So what happens is you can get these blue-green algae blooms where you get like a Kelly green paint, like somebody dumped Kelly green paint over the lake. I don't know if you've ever had that out in New, but that can happen once you have zebra mussels.
Now, you're showing light penetration, is that what, you didn't mention that, there's not a lot of zebra mussels, is that what you're?
No, actually zebra mussels increase light penetration because they're taking that,
Oh, light as in, okay.
like sunlight.
I thought
yes.
you were,
Sorry, I should have.
yeah,
it's
I'm easily
sunlight.
confused. What is your impression of the level of zebra mussels in the lake?
It varies. I mean, typically what happens when they first come to a system, they take off and then they crash, and then they typically cycle at a lower level, lower oscillation between those. Typically what they've found through research in Michigan anyway is that zebra mussels do better in cooler water. They used to think that the cold winters would affect the zebra mussel, but they really don't. It's the hot weather. So if you get sustained temperatures of over 80 degrees in the water for like over a week, that's when you see mortality from the zebra mussels. They did some studies on it in Gull Lake, Michigan State did, and they determined that the certain temperature regime would be detrimental to zebra mussels. So if you have, like this past summer was not extremely hot, so they probably did pretty well this past summer. Like in 2012, we had a very hot summer. And so there was a crash of zebra mussel on a lot of lakes. So it just varies from year to year. You usually can tell when you're taking your docks out at the end of the year.
Well, it's funny, I'm on Tupper, but I mean, my impression has been that after the initial invasion, when they were everywhere,
Yeah.
it's way down from
Yeah,
those numbers.
that's normal.
Yeah.
Yep. It doesn't mean that there's not any in there, it just
Right.
means they're at a lower level.
Right.
There are certain fish that eat them too, but there's just not a lot of them that do. So one of the things we're going to do is measure the water quality too. That's another thing that we're proposing, because when we looked at the data, there wasn't a lot of data. We had the Wally Fusilier report from the 80s. The DEQ, because it's a public access lake, they do monitor it, but it's very infrequently. The latest data we had from the DEQ was from 1988. This is a September 1980 data, and I wanted to show that depth, temperature, dissolved oxygen profile, because that's very important to fish and other aquatic organisms, is they need a certain amount of oxygen to survive. And with fish, it's not only the oxygen, it's also the temperature. A lot of fish are prone to, or they like certain temperatures, like trout and salmon like cooler temperatures. So in order to get that cooler temperature, they'd have to go fairly deep in Kenema Lake later in the summer. And once they went down there wouldn't be enough oxygen for them. So that's why you don't have salmon and trout in Lake Kenema. And to a lesser extent, pike, northern pike, and walleye also, they don't have to have as cold water as the trout and salmon, but they've got to have cooler water, typically in the 60s. Low 60s is what they prefer. So to get down to that, they're probably in the 3 to 4 parts per million for oxygen. So they're kind of, it's probably based on information I'm seeing from limited water quality data. I'm guessing you probably don't have a ton of walleye in the lake either. We looked up, the DNR does not have any records on, at least online, for any fish surveys. We are going to make an inquiry with the district office to see. Sometimes they'll have some information, they just don't publish it.
Well, they're doing the surveys, I can tell you that.
Yeah. So they didn't, I mean, a lot of lakes, they'll have it right out online. You can get the report, but they didn't have it for Kenema Lake. So one of the things that feeds plant growth in lakes is phosphorus. Phosphorus is the limiting nutrient primarily in the lakes. Just for instance, on a bag of fertilizer, it'll have 3 numbers on it. That middle number is the phosphorus. In Michigan, a few years ago, they passed a law that said you can buy regular landscaping or for residential lawns, you couldn't buy fertilizer with phosphorus in it. You could buy starter fertilizer in the smaller packages, but you couldn't find the big 30, 40 pound bags of fertilizer with phosphorus in them. And also the professional companies that apply fertilizer are not supposed to be putting phosphorus fertilizer in either unless they're starting a lawn. So that has helped with the amount of phosphorus going into lakes. It's probably too early to tell whether it's had, long-term effect, but we are definitely in some of the trends that EPA and DEQ is seeing that the phosphorus levels appear to be going down in Michigan Lake. But besides what's coming in from the watershed, there also is what's called internal sources of phosphorus, and that is particularly in the sediments of the lake and also in the plants. When they die, they release phosphorus back to the water. So a lot of times at the end of the season, when plants start to die and you get that first frost or the first cold night, and some of the plants will start to die and you'll see an algae bloom. What causes that is that phosphorus being released back to the water, and it's readily available for algae to use. Also, you can measure the amount of release from the sediments, because under anoxic or oxygen-less conditions, which is found in the deeper water, you get release of this phosphorus from the sediment, so you can measure that. We saw that in some of the older DEQ data showed significant internal loading. The problem is before 1972, phosphorus readings were unreliable. So the higher readings we saw were back in the 60s and early 70s. So we didn't see as high levels in the ones from the 1980s. That's one thing we want to verify, that that's not going on. So based on these phosphorus levels or the ambient concentrations in the water, lakes are classified based on the amount of nutrients they have. So based on this level of detail and the limited data that we have, Lake Ponema would be considered a mesoeutrophic lake, meaning that the phosphorus levels are right around the eutrophic level, but the clarity is in the mesotrophic level, and the chlorophyll levels, which is a rough estimate of algae growth, is also in the mesotrophic range. Most of it, by the way, just to tell you, about 60% of lakes in Michigan are mesotrophic, so that is the most common type of lake in Michigan. So based on what we're proposing with the management of the aquatic plants, getting some more information on the physical characteristics and better mapping for the lake, and also for measuring the water quality, setting up a program for that. These are going to be, we're proposing based on the amount of invasive plants you have in the lake, starting out with a aquatic plant control of $70,000 per year over 5 years. Now it's likely that after 4 or 5 years of managing it, that number will go down. It should go down if it's effective. And backwards. So the coordination and the field evaluations, and all the coordination of the contractors and the putting together bid documents, and evaluating bids that we receive on behalf of the township, and making recommendations to the township for both awarding contracts and for payments of those contracts. All of that entails into the second line item, which is the $8,500. That also includes attending meetings on a periodic basis. So the water quality monitoring, which we're proposing 2 separate basins be measured. One is in the 70 to 80 foot range, and the other one is about 60 feet deep. They're separate basins. We're proposing to evaluate each of those separately. And the hydroacoustic mapping, which will primarily be done in the first year, but paid over into 5 years. and the administration contingency, which are fees that might be incurred by the SAD through administrative costs or through the public hearing costs. So the first year, I think the township is going to be about a $2,000. So that whole, in the first year, that whole line item would be going into the hearing costs. So the total annual budget each year would be $85,000. And when we ran through the assessments that were provided by Mr. Broker, I think that worked out to about $225 for lakefront. Does that sound about right, Tom?
Pretty close.
Somewhere in that range, $225. I think right now they're paying about $195 to $200.
Yes.
So it's a little bit of an increase, but what we're hoping is that through better management, we're able to lower that assessment, particularly for if they continue this program beyond this 5 years. Typically with most of our clients, that's what we're able to do is get the assessments down, accrue some surplus funds so that you can, scale back those assessments the following years. That's all I have. Any questions?
Board, is there any questions from any of the trustees? I have a question for you. Has this information been shared with the Lake Association on
Yes,
Panema?
I've presented it, not in a PowerPoint, but I presented it verbally to the Lake Association, and I think it was on the 20th of October, somewhere in that range. I'd have to look up the date, but it was about 3 weeks ago. So,
Okay, those are the important people.
right, and I believe they took a vote, and I think there was about 30-some that were in favor, and one person was not in favor of moving forward with this budget.
And they're the ones that picked that chemical?
The chemical, or
Yeah, I mean, did you guys determine what chemicals to use, or did you give them a list of options? The reason I'm asking is because there was a lot of discussion about moving towards a natural.
right, and it
Solution.
depends on what we're proposing is primarily chemical in the first few years, but what we recommend is using the selective systemic herbicides, which are more effective. They're more expensive in the first.
And you explained that to them?
Yes.
Okay.
And so once we get the milfoil under control, then we would probably move into more mechanical harvesting, which is physical removal. Can work with star stonework and with curdling pond, and you can use that method on those two. It does not work on milfoil though yet. That's why it generally takes a couple of years to get the milfoil under control.
Any questions from anyone in the audience? Dave?
Yeah, you want me there, or do you trust how I speak?
I trust you.
Okay. I've got 4 or 5 various questions.
Okay.
Well then, why don't you come up? If you got that many, let's get them on. So we make sure we get the question and the answer.
You talked about mapping the lake, and I see where that's absolutely necessary. And I'm curious about the depth. Different people tell me. I was with the Lake Association meeting when this was first started,
Okay.
and I did the Sussy disc readings, and there was a fellow from Lansing came out, and we did various water control tests and that sort of thing.
Was it real bednars at that time?
And the best records that he had was around 82 to 85 feet. And we did snoop around, and there's one spot that I know for a fact is 82 or 84.
Okay.
If there's any more than that, I don't know.
Right.
So your figures are very close from that respect of what you've got and what I came up with.
Okay.
So if that comforting or helps anyway at all.
Yeah, that definitely helps.
But then I have also a very old map, I think it's 1934 or 1938, that shows the various depths of the lake, which I have no idea other than just going by that. But I would be curious, because people would say this, that, or the other, or if somebody would come to our place and want to go out speeding, skiing or something of this nature, I can tell them where the sandbars are, because I know for a fact there's sandbars before this ever happened. And there's 6 less islands on the lake than when I was a kid that have eroded through life. So what was island bigger than this room is now nothing but a sandbar 1.5 feet deep. So that's why I would like to personally get a map of that.
Yep, and once we get the maps created, we typically, what we give is a electronic copy, which is in a PDF format. So they would put it on their association website, or the township, sometimes puts it on their website, and then people can download it and have a hard copy of that map.
This people can't download it. I don't know enough about a computer to turn it off.
Well, at least you can look at it on the screen, probably.
But the point is, I would like to get that information.
Okay.
If there's a way of printing that map and putting it up in the house someplace, if somebody says the shape of the lake, how deep is it, I can say, well, right here, right here, right here.
Yep. Yeah, we can provide hard copy. I mean, we could provide one to the township, like a bigger map. If they wanted to use something like that, we could do that.
It's just a thought, but my personal interest is what I was talking about right there.
Okay.
That's one thing about it. Is this Panema, Squaw, and Tupper total, or is this
No,
strictly
this is
Panema?
just Panema, and that's how the special assessment district was set up. If I'm right, that's what I was told, so.
Well, way back in the day, I think when it was first set up, it was set up under the association. I don't know that to be a fact, but I thought. And so I was trying to figure the price here a little bit, and the current of the lake. I know for a fact that Squaw does drain into Panema.
Yes.
It's not exactly still water.
Right. Yep.
And Loon drains into Squaw. So there may be weeds, if there's been harvesting done on any of these other lakes,
That come down.
that are
Yep.
coming down.
Yep.
So,
I know Squaw does have their own special assessment district.
well, they did at one time.
Right.
And Tupper Lake is kind of a hitchhiker, because they get the residue and the benefit of what the people on Panema are paying for.
Right.
Okay. What type of weeds would need harvesting when spray does most of it? Now, I know for a fact that harvesting tears up milfoil, and milfoil is spread through fragmentation,
Right.
among other ways.
Yep.
Are there other weeds that are done the same thing? Because if the harvesting might work for the stonewort where the others won't, if stonewort and milfoil grow together or are compatible, brothers to one another, that wouldn't be too cool.
Right, you definitely, and that's what I was talking about to Mr. Schumacher, or no, it was Testa. But that's why I was explaining that you have to get the milfoil under control before you can go in with a harvester, because you potentially could be making it, or spreading the milfoil around by doing that.
Well, part of my question was, if I didn't say it, was are there other weeds, now we know milfoil is, but are there other weeds that are spread by harvesting,
I'm sure there are, but there's...
by fragmentation?
Starry can be spread, at least the reproductive structure of it, but it's fairly significant already in your lake, so I don't think it's a big issue on Lake Panema. But if you had a lake where the starry stonewort infestation was only at one spot, you probably would not want to harvest, correct? You'd want to just use, and we are not saying to only harvest starry stonewort. It usually takes a combination of chemicals and harvesting because it's so prolific at growing that you have to basically hit it with everything with the kitchen sink.
Now, does that starry stonewort, I mean, most weeds run out of enough light to accommodate them properly, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 feet,
Correct.
plus or minus a little bit.
Yep.
Is a starry stonewort one of those that only goes down 6 or 8 feet, or does it
No,
go
it
all
can
the
go
way down?
deeper than that. We found it in, I think, about 20, 25 feet of water before.
Okay,
So it usually, to be honest with you, when it's growing that deep, it's really not, most people aren't affected by it now.
right.
But it's still there, so. But yeah, it can grow that deep for
Well,
sure.
it would seed and crawl up to shallower depth, I'm sure.
Yes, it can, yep, for sure. And the problem with starry is, like I mentioned, it's relatively new. They're researching it right now, even into the biology and life history of it right now. So we're finding out things every day different about starry. So I think eventually we will have better management strategies on starry stone, but right now we don't have a lot of answers when it comes to managing it properly.
Well, that would,
We've got a lot of experience, our company has about 10 years of experience with starry, and we know what works and what doesn't work. Probably know more about what doesn't work than what works, to be honest with you, but we've learned the hard way on some projects.
well, we're treating weeds there, and like, I don't know if I said before, maybe you said, there are good weeds and there are bad weeds.
Exactly, right.
And one of my understandings of the starry stonewort is it starts on the bottom and then builds up like coats of paint.
Yep,
And it's very indiscriminate what it suffocates out.
correct.
And if it suffocated out the ones you guys are spraying, that'd be wonderful. But if it suffocates out the ones that you want to keep, that's not good.
Yeah, it's pretty indiscriminate, so,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah. Yep.
Okay.
I guess I would characterize starry stonewort management as it's more, there's more hours labor, it's more labor intensive for not only the applicator, but also for us, because we have to go out there more to monitor, because it changes so much over, it can change from, in a 2-week period, in the height of its growth period.
Are they compatible, starry stonewort and milfoil in the
Yes,
same
it can
areas?
grow in the same areas, definitely. Yep. I think eventually starry, if there weren't any control measures, would outcompete milfoil. But when they start, at the beginning of the season, they definitely can grow in the same areas.
Do any of these various sprays that you're aware of, I won't say eliminate, but help cut down on the zebra mussels at all?
There are agents out there that work on it. A promising one is a natural bacteria that's found in soil, and it's fairly selective on quagga mussels and zebra mussels, which are both invasive and exotic. The problem with it, it's not practical to use on an inland lake because it would be so cost prohibitive right now. They use it on a lot of like municipal intakes and stuff like that where it's focused in a small area and they're able to eliminate the zebra mussels from attaching to the intakes because it can greatly reduce the amount of flow that's coming in because it makes all the holes smaller. But there's nothing on a lake-wide scale at this point that's available for. There are things that will kill other things besides the zebra mussels, and the DEP won't allow that because it would cause too much damage to a system.
Have they done any, you've got a certain ballpark batch of chemicals that you use for 90% of it.
Correct.
Has any research been done on that as to what effect that has on the wildlife around there? I'm
Yes.
gonna say frogs, for instance, because I know before, way back, 15 years ago or whenever this was started, you used to see quite a few frogs.
Yep.
Today,
What they-
you don't see a dozen all
Right,
summer.
what they found the biggest impact on frogs actually is not aquatic herbicides, it's stuff that people use on the lawn. The Roundup, which is glyphosate, has a surfactant on it. The active ingredient is not what kills the frog, it's the surfactant which helps it to penetrate the cuticle of the plant. It's actually a coating agent, and what happens with frogs is when that gets on frogs, frogs breathe through their skin, so it coats their skin and it suffocates them. So they've actually done studies that Roundup has had direct effects on frogs, and that's why on the label of Roundup, it's not approved for aquatic use. In fact, you're not supposed to use it, I think it's within 20 feet of any water. But a lot of people don't read the fine print on labels, it works, so they use it where, I've seen people using it on cattails and stuff right at the water's edge.
Well, this is kind of what I'm thinking in lily pads.
Yep.
So it is.
Glyphosate will kill cattails and will kill lily pads, but there's an aquatic labeled glyphosate that is allowed because it doesn't have that surfactant in it.
So there is a connection, it's not just what I think I saw.
Right, I don't have hard data, but I know there's some studies that have been done and found that is an effect
Okay.
of the Roundup.
Well, I think I got maybe one or two more here. Yeah, these assessments, you printed out graph, and I understand that. And I know you're doing some studying, which is extra, you won't have to do a dozen times. But can we expect that assessment to stay the same? Or you come out there and if you spend 15 hours treating the lake, it's gonna be the same thing as if you did 40 hours this year, next year you spend 15
No.
hours?
You're talking about the treatments themselves. All of the contracts that we put together are based on a unit cost. And it's usually an acre, sometimes it's a pound of material applied, so they only get paid for what they actually do. So theoretically, that's why I said over time, you should see that savings because you're not treating as much. Now, on Panema, you may be taking something that you were treating in the first couple of years and using it for mechanical harvesting. So the overall cost may not go down, but the amount of herbicide use that you have should go down over time. Is that kind of what you were getting at? Or?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're getting fed from 2 or 3 different angles, which the Fenton Mill Pond is a very bad thorn in my side.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. I've driven by it before. So.
And so if we feed the weeds to get rid of them and they seed them, that's not really too cool.
Yep, I agree.
And they're harvesting, I mean, you're gonna be on top of that milfoil forever unless they figure out something better.
Yeah, and that's the problem with milfoil. It's really impossible to eradicate it in a situation like Lake Panema because you have external sources, not only from the mill pond, but also from the public access. You've got other inlets, like you said, from Squad and some of these other lakes, and people that bring in boats from other lakes.
Well, I'm not just speaking for my point, I mean, Tupper and the Linden Mill Pond, there's a whole lot of people
Oh, yeah.
affected.
Yep,
Sure,
and I know
well-
they're trying to get a program set up, I think, on Linden Mill Pond too, so.
Well, I would think probably they would. Thank you.
All right, thanks for your question.
Any other questions?
Yeah, how critical is the timing on applying the
It's
control?
very critical, especially with certain plants, and the reason is, particularly with herbicides, the effectiveness of herbicides based on concentration and exposure time and it's a linear curve.
Water temperature have a...
Yes, temperature plays into it too with some herbicides. Some herbicides it's not as important. But with typically with the systemic herbicides, the 2,4-Ds of the world, the triclopiers, you generally want that plant to be actively growing. And when it's starting out early in the season, that's when it's growing at its fastest rate typically. And so it's metabolizing faster. And so that's the perfect time to apply a herbicide. Plus you're getting it in before the natives start, so your chances of having collateral damage to the native plants is going to be significantly less.
Well, Lake Penema water levels are controlled by the county drain commission.
Yep.
So it's fairly low in the springtime. They don't raise the level until Memorial Day.
Right.
Why my Memorial, I've called them several years trying to get them to raise it earlier because everybody wants to get their boat and docks in earlier. And I have an uphill fight with that. They say it was a court issue, and maybe the board knows more about that than I do.
Yeah, we could look into that, yeah.
But applying, you're talking about a difference in volume of water by 8-10 inches at times, depending on how low they let it go in the winter and how long it takes to bring it.
Right, depends on how wet your spring is and all that
So
melt.
if you're applying at a low level and all of a sudden they raise the level, isn't that diluting the chemicals?
It can, yeah, we can definitely, when we have situations like that, we try to coordinate with whoever the authority is operating the dam or the water level. Now, if they are mandated by court order, we may not have as much control over that. One of the things that we notice that kind of plays into that is there's on I think the one map I showed that 750-foot setback from the inlet to Tupper Lake from Penema. That is set in place by the DEQ based on the information that they have for discharge and volume. I think if we can get them better information, we can maybe get that reduced down to about 300 feet. So the people that live in that area that right now can't get treated because they're in that setback area possibly could. So that's one way that just by mapping or getting better information, you can change some of the stipulation or conditions of the permit. We'd have to check into the water level thing. That could get a little more complicated, but we can definitely look into that.
Because when the level's low, you have boats churning through the weeds.
Right,
They can
same problem. Yep.
It goes up and all of a sudden the weeds disappear from the crops because the water levels.
And the sediments, when the sediments are stirred up, that can cause more nutrients to go in the water column, which can cause algae bloom. It also can affect some of the herbicides, makes them less effective when you got all that sediment churned up. Yep, that's all good points.
Okay. Hearing no questions, we need to present resolution number 2017-45. Mr. Broker, please.
2017-45 is a revised resolution similar to one that was looked at September 18th when we last looked at this issue. It approves the amended plans and estimates of cost based on what we've seen tonight in this report. It creates the Lake Penema Improvement Special Assessment District number 2, which includes all properties with frontage on or legal access to the lake. It directs the supervisor to create a special assessment role and repeals any conflicting resolutions.
Okay, need him to present or...
I have a suggestion about a language change. When would I do that?
Right about now.
Right now?
Yeah, I don't see anywhere in the resolution where it talks about the length of the plan. So I just, in paragraph 1, very end there, it says completion of $425,000. I just add over the 5-year life of the plan there, so it's clear. I didn't see reference to length anywhere in it,
Okay. Yep, we can do that.
if that's okay.
Anything else? Okay. Okay, I'll move the resolution.
I don't know if it's important or not. But, second.
Roll call, please.
Krug.
Yes.
Mathis is absent. Kessler.
Yes.
Shoemaker.
Yes.
Gopel.
Yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Motion carries, resolution is adopted.
Thank you. Next on the agenda are reports. Are there any committee reports to be made to the board tonight? Okay, there are no communications, no adoption of ordinances, no unfinished business. The first new business is the proposed renewal of the funding commitment of the PEG coordinator. And this is where the 3 schools and the municipalities put money in for the coordination of the PEG program and PEG funds. And this is basically managing Channel 191. Anything else, Tom?
Well, the memo in the packet just kind of gives a little history. A few years ago, the communities approved a 3-year funding. We filled the position about a year later in the fall of 14. About a year after that, Randon, the young gentleman in our back room who's recording us right now, was hired as the PEG coordinator. And in the last 2 years, he has taken this forward, and he leaps and bounds. I listed a number of improvements over the last couple of years, and not only just an increase of the quantity, variety, and quality of the video content in 191, also he's got very good working relationships with the video production programs at all 3 high schools, and actually Heartland High School is kind of joining in now because some of Tyrone Township is in their school district. He helps coordinate the purchase of equipment to maximize efficiency and make sure they're getting the best technology for the dollar. They've implemented an inventory, replacement, repair, disposal process to make sure if the equipment is truly no good, that it's scrapped. If it can be sold, it can be sold, and that money can go toward the next grant. Coordination and recording of local community events. I think Linden Back to the Bricks got recorded this past year, the Art Walk. All 3 high schools actually live streamed their graduation ceremonies this past year on Channel 191. Channel 191 is live streamed 24/7 through a YouTube channel. And on the website there, it's www.facts-tv.com. Also on that website is a real-time programming guide for 191, so you can see what's on. And also that website has on-demand capabilities for archived content. So, and we've seen a marked increase in viewership both of 191 and the YouTube channel. So with all those improvements, the consortium recommended unanimously to continue the program with the PEG coordinator, and they've recommended that the annual salary be increased from $20,000 to $25,000. The breakdown of the salary, the allocation of the cost is included in the packet. Our cost goes up to about $5,900 per year as opposed to $5,200 for the last 3 years. The school districts, all 4 school districts have already, let's see it in here. Did it not get added? Is it?
It's in there.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize.
It's right here.
No, but I actually had a chart that had listed all the school districts. I must have,
Just got on the bottom here what the breakdown is.
okay, yeah. So, but all 4 school districts have approved their funding. The Linden, Fenton, and Lake Fenton are paying $3,000 each. Heartland's doing $1,000. And then the rest of it is divided up based on our relative franchise and PEG fee receipts. So our share is $5,900, about a $700 increase from what we've been paying.
Comments or questions?
Just so the residents know, it doesn't come out of our general fund or anything else like that. Could you explain where it comes
Well,
from?
this, unlike our capital equipment purchases, this does not come out of PEG funds. This does come, when it comes out of the franchise fees. We get roughly $250,000 a year in franchise fees. And so, as we have for the past 3 years, this would be allocating a small portion of that back into the program.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Okay, I need a motion to authorize the expenditure of up to $5,900 per year for 3 years towards the big coordinator's salary. And this will continue the managing and the public access channel as presented.
So moved.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Shoemaker.
Yes.
Gopel.
Yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Kessler.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Krug.
Yes.
Mathis is absent, motion carries.
Okay, the next is the adoption of the 2018 meeting schedule. The ZBA and the Planning Commission have already reviewed it. They feel their dates are fine. Are there any comments, questions, or concerns?
I thought we.
Doesn't have here on Valentine's Day, that's good.
Yeah. I thought we talked about starting the meetings, township meetings at 7 instead of 7:30. Is that kind of like,
Can't do it.
can't do it?
Can't do it.
Okay.
Okay, I need a motion to adopt the 2018 Fenton Township meeting schedule as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mathis is absent, Kessler.
Yes.
Krug.
Yes.
Gopel.
Yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Shoemaker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, moving right along, schedule a public hearing on the 2018 Fenton Township budget. Any comments, questions, or concerns?
I think December 4th would be a great day for that.
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna be here?
I can work on it.
Okay, I knew I shouldn't ask. A motion to schedule a public hearing on the 2018 Fenton Township budget to be held at the December 4th, 2017 Township Board meeting.
So moved.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Gopel.
Yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Mathis is absent, Krug.
Yes.
Shoemaker.
Yes.
Kessler.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, and next is the resolution 2017-46. This is to develop a special lighting assessment district for Byram Ridge. The property owners have petitioned for the street light assessment, and we have therefore prepared the schedule and the special assessment district. It is not as big an impact as it may be because the previous owner / developer already has a lot of the internal or the wiring and stuff in for these, so it was planned, but then the economy bottomed out and it never happened. So any comments or questions?
We're just creating a district right now, is that what we're
We're
doing?
setting the date for the first hearing.
Yeah, first hearing, it's all we're
Yeah,
doing.
all we've done so far is validate the petitions.
I think December 4th would be a good date for that, too.
Okay, could you read resolution 2017-46, Tom?
Sure, just I'll summarize the resolution. Acknowledges receipt of the special assessment petitions, tentatively establishes the district boundaries as all lots in Byram Ridge number 1 subdivision, schedules a public hearing on the creation of the district for the December 4th meeting, directs the clerk to mail and publish the hearing notice according to applicable statutes, and repeals any conflicting resolutions.
So moved.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Kessler.
Yes.
Krug.
Yes.
Shoemaker.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Mathis. Absent Tucker.
Yes.
Gopel.
Yes.
Motion carries, resolution's adopted.
Next is resolution 2017-47. This is the sewer bond debt obligation for 2018. You may remember that each year the Drain Commission requires the township to adopt a resolution regarding these sources. Any comments, questions?
Is the 200 tap fee a real number relative to current
Oh, yeah, we're gonna collect them all about 4 this year, I think.
Tap fees?
Yeah,
Oh, awesome.
so I just kinda threw that in. It
Yeah.
all comes out of the same pot,
Right,
so.
I understood, I just wasn't, I didn't want it to be
Yeah, no, I-
misleading if we didn't have the numbers to back
No,
it up.
no, we're good with
Okay.
that. And just to clarify, these are just the payments on the bonds that the county issued, which are pretty scarce now. We've paid off most of those. Most of the bonds we have are ones we've issued on our own.
Okay, Tom, could you present the resolution, please?
Sure. Just very briefly, the resolution, as requested by the Genesee County Drain Commissioner, identifies the source of funds to make 2018 sewer bond payments to the county. $200,000 out of tap-in fees, $143,713.61 from user rates for a total of $343,713.61. And then it also directs the clerk to provide 1 copy to the county and maintain 1 copy for our files.
I'll move the resolution.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Tucker.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Gopel.
Yes.
Kessler.
Yes.
Shoemaker.
Yes.
Mathis is absent. Krug.
Yes.
Motion carries. Resolution is adopted.
The next is Resolution 2017-48. This is the acceptance and/or rejection of 2017 tax reverted parcels. We have another place where there were supposed to be condos, and it's in Fenton Orchards like we've had before. And we have to decide if we want to take them and retain them, or if we want to let the county have it. It has been mentioned if we take them and keep them, we could be required to pay taxes on them. So it's kind of a roll of the dice. And it's whatever your pleasure is.
Is this the level where we would be able to keep the proceeds if we sell them?
Yes.
Yes.
And have we got some offers on some of the other things we have in here? Is there really nothing at all?
Nothing going on right now. We have, this is 3 4-unit condo sites. We have 4 of these already for a total of 16 just down the road from there.
Yeah.
So we haven't had too many bites on those. So that's why I wanted to make sure the board decided, do you want to add these to the
What would
inventory?
what
or-
would our taxable liability be on these, if you would know roughly?
I don't know what she has the empty ones priced at.
Okay.
When they're not developed, there's a bunch of fighting in the tax tribunal, and the bottom line is you gotta assess them at the pre-development value, not what they're worth on the market now, so it would be less than a normal assessment based on true cash value. I don't know what that number exactly would be.
Okay.
But we should probably, maybe we should find that out before because that is a fair.
We could wait one more
We
meeting.
wanna
because
table
they don't
this
need- they
till-
don't- They don't
Yeah.
need to know until the 18th of December.
Just a thought. You know, there's such a thing as price them to move. Condo, the other condo lots are tougher to build on if you've been by them. They're not, they back up basically to nothing. They're slope funny. There's things wrong with
These are
them.
good lots.
These are better.
These are better?
These are better.
Yeah, 3 of them were really
Plus, like I
good
said, when you
numbers.
price things to move, if you want to get rid of them, and I think as far as when we revisit
Right.
our, our marketing strategy with selling these properties,
Yeah.
that we get a little more aggressive with these condo ones. Because it costs us nothing to get them. So even if
Right.
the taxes are normal,
Right.
and we move them by spring,
Right.
which we should if
Right.
we price them right,
Right.
it's money in our pocket. So
Well, if
if
we
you guys
already
want to
got-
wait, it's fine, but I'm
If
fine.
we already
with
have
it.
worse ones, I guess we look kind of silly. And I'm guessing it wouldn't hit the rolls probably till next June anyway.
June. Correct.
If it did, so, yeah, I'm ready to roll with it. I think you make a good point, John.
Okay. Tom, could you present resolution 2017-48, please?
Sure. Resolution identifies the tax reverted properties that did not sell at county auction, and it acknowledges that the properties will automatically transfer to the township unless a resolution of objection is adopted. And so in this case, we're going to adopt a resolution to actually specifically confirm that we accept the properties, and that'll be conveyed to the county treasurer's office.
So moved.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Mathis is absent. Kessler.
Yes.
Gopel.
Yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Krug.
Yes.
Shoemaker.
Yes.
Motion carries. Resolution's adopted.
Okay, the next action item is a lot of regret. From my part, it's a letter of resignation from the Planning Commission. Mr. Tom Richards has submitted a letter of resignation, and Tom has been a valued, active member, I think on the, as it says here in my paper, since 2006. And Mr. Tucker, any comments? You've worked real good.
Yeah, I hate to see him go, you always do. Tom has always been the voice of the people, if you will, at the Plan Commission. He's got a good grassroots feel of what's going on. You know, we tend to stack the Plan Commission with folks that have development and real estate. And he asks the real questions that most of the people are interested in. You know, so he's going to be missed. And I tried to prod him a little bit, but I think it's some health related things. And so if you get to that point, you know, I understand that. And I probably still will vote no, but you know, I thank him for his service and I wish him well. Do we have a, we usually do follow these up with a little something, is that next
We'll
meeting?
have
Next
it
meeting,
next
because I just got the letter Friday.
That's fine, I just want to make sure to get.
We'll have the,
Yeah, that's good.
any
I'll
other
sign that.
comments or questions? If not, motion to accept with regret the resignation of Thomas Richards from the Fenton Township Planning Commission effective immediately.
So moved.
Support?
Roll call, please.
Kessler.
Yes.
Gopel.
Yes.
Krug.
Yes.
Shoemaker.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Mathis is absent. Tucker.
Yes.
I thought you were gonna vote no.
Yeah, no.
Next is appointment to the Genesee County Metro Alliance. We have the pleasure of doing this every year. Currently, I am the alternate elected. Resident Andy Marco is the citizen rep, and trustee Kessler is the board elected rep. Do we want to keep it that way, or,
I'm gonna have to step down.
okay? Who,
The one that's not here is usually the one that gets stuck with that, right?
I think mine's it.
Is that how that works?
whatever motion you want to make, Tucker.
I didn't say anything.
Any volunteers?
Mr. Gopel?
No.
We're not voting yet, Mark.
No, that wasn't a vote, that was a statement.
Any? Bonnie, Bonnie's
I
the only
don't
one.
have time
Nope.
for it, yeah.
Can we hold this off till the next meeting?
Sure.
Let's just hold it off and let
Sue's not here then.
Supervisor Matt, yeah. Let's see who misses the December 4th meeting, Tucker.
I'll move that we move to December 4th.
There's a rule of prior absence, though, that applied here.
We'll vote on it, John.
Yeah. thanks, Bob.
Okay, we'll move that to the December 4th meeting.
John.
Next, before we go into closed session, are there any board comments that would like to be made? I've got one. It was decided today that the ribbon cutting for the Thompson Road Regional Dog Park will be next Monday at 1 o'clock. And you're all welcome to be there.
What date is that? If
That's
you-
Monday,
27th.
27th,
Thank you very much.
1 o'clock. Humans are allowed to be there if they're accompanied by a dog. Dogs get in, he has to bring a human with him. But no, we're gonna have a ribbon cutting and then hopefully have a bigger ceremony in the spring, a grand opening. The gates are up, the brand new sign is up, the ditches have been cleared and cleaned, and we are now at the point where we're waiting for a permit to drill the well, and that'll take 1 day. So even if we don't do it in the fall, we can do it in the spring. So I was hoping you had already heard about that. Thanks, Hannah. Any other comments or questions?
Thompson Road is open.
Oh, they get the paint down?
Today.
Got the name down.
I was gonna say, it wasn't when I come in yesterday. Okay,
Still had
great.
to go straight.
Is there any public comment on agenda or non-agenda items? Okay, hearing none. I need a motion to recess the open meeting for the purpose of convening a closed session to review the proposed collective bargaining agreement with the Fenton Township Employees Union. I need a motion, please.
Support.
Roll call, please.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Shoemaker.
Yes.
Mathis is absent. Krug.
Yes.
Kessler.
Yes.
Gopel.
Yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Want to take a short break and